Mary Helen Dara, Taylor Automotive Family. Today we speak with Kelly Gerken, who is the founder and director of Sufficient Grace Ministries. She and her organization took a small local chapter and now have expanded globally to ensure that families facing loss of pregnancy or infant loss have compassion and support. We are very honored to share her story, and we cannot wait to get inside and meet Kelly. Kelly, thank you so much for being here today. Sufficient Grace Ministries was born out of a very personal experience, I understand. Can you share what led you to create the organization and how those experiences continue to guide your mission today?
Absolutely. My husband and I experienced the loss of 3 of our 5 children. In 1996, we were 21 years old. We had a 2.5-year-old son, and we were expecting twins, Faith and Grace, twin girls. They were identical, and they had a condition called twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome. About 6.5 months into the pregnancy, they found that there was no heartbeat, and those words change your life forever. You measure your life in what happened before and what happened after. And being 21 years old, one of the things that, as I'm sharing this when I'm doing training or sharing this other places, that I think is a powerful indicator of that life-changing moment is we had to buy a burial plot for our entire family so that we could bury our daughters and that we could be buried at 21 years old. Yeah, absolutely. So no one can prepare you for the silence in the room when your babies are born still. You expect that newborn cry still, and a mother still has to labor and give birth. And so to hear those words, stillborn and funeral, in a place where new life is supposed to be, that just absolutely changes you. And so it was very difficult, and the grief was very difficult. And I am a praying woman. I'm a woman of faith. And so right away when we received the diagnosis, we were praying and we were hopeful. And so there were weeks of carrying them, knowing that that they had this condition, but just still hopeful for that miracle. And so then afterwards, learning to live in a world where you didn't get that answer to prayer just is a whole other journey. But again, we still trusted God and prayed. And our next pregnancy, we were no longer invincible. You lose your invincibility when you experience loss. And so holding our breath for that midway ultrasound to say everything's going to be okay. And unfortunately, we received a life-limiting diagnosis for our son about midway through the pregnancy, completely different than just a separate fluke, different diagnosis, had nothing to do with what happened to our daughters. Our son did not have functioning kidneys. He had a condition called Potter syndrome. And we had a week to decide if we would continue our pregnancy. And they tell you a lot of scary things can happen when you find out that your baby has no kidneys and they're developing without amniotic fluid and all of these things. So I wrestled and prayed through that week. My husband was very quiet and shut down during that time. That was his way of coping. And so that was a difficult week of seeking and prayer. And at the end of the week, we chose to continue our pregnancy. We had 4.5 more months to go, knowing our son's life was expected to be brief, and also knowing what was ahead for us. We had already buried children, so we knew what that was like. And during that 4.5 months, I had an amazing spiritual mentor named Dinah. And she would say, I would say, how do I do this again? How do I labor and give birth to a baby I don't get to keep? How do I do this again? And she would say, God doesn't give us the grace we need tomorrow, today. He only gives us enough grace for today. And somehow his grace will be sufficient for you. Like in 2 Corinthians 12:9, his grace is sufficient for us and his strength is made perfect in our weakness. And I wish I could tell you I skipped through those 4.5 months like a faith giant and that I just knew that that grace would be there and it would be enough. But honestly, I wrestled a lot. I tried to trust in God and pray, but I also felt overwhelmed. I felt doubt and I felt fear. And what I learned during that time is that faith isn't not feeling doubt or fear. It's trusting in God anyway and believing in him even when you don't see and even when you don't have that answer in front of you. And so we named our son Thomas because there's a famous Thomas in the Bible that he's the one after Jesus is raised from the dead that says, I need to see those holes in your hand to believe. And Jesus looks at him and he says, Thomas, you believe because you see, but blessed are those who believe without seeing. And that was really our journey, is trusting even if we don't get that answer this side of heaven. Thomas was born alive, and he lived for 6 hours. They are the most precious hours of my life, that time with him. And I could have never imagined what was waiting for me. It was more than sufficient grace. It was so beautiful. And I felt a peace I can't describe and a joy. I would do those 4.5 months again and again for the time that we had with him. And as I rocked him and sang to him as he left this earth, I knew we weren't alone. And I knew that God was with us. And the fact that I was chosen to be the mother of this child was such a privilege. And I called my friend Dinah right away and said, guess what I got to do? I got to be the one chosen to sing to him as he left this earth. And what a privilege to be his mother. And so obviously the heart and foundation of our ministry is definitely from someone who has walked this path and a mother who has said goodbye to her children. And understanding also walking this with my husband and watching a father grieve and watching my oldest son grieve and my youngest son who was born after our losses and how that impacts him. But I didn't start the ministry right away. We had to grieve and heal. It wasn't until 8 years later that we started Sufficient Grace Ministries.
All right. Well, how would you describe the heart of your ministry and the approach you take offering comfort and support?
Well, it began with a baby book for brief lives. So the book Dreams of You that we created is a place for parents to put the dreams they have for their child, because you don't just lose your child, you lose all the dreams you have for them. And a comfort bear, something soft for them to hold when they leave the hospital. And so those resources were the first connection. And then as we connected with more parents and heard their stories and their regrets and what they wish they would have known, we added more resources over the years. So clothes to fit babies in any gestation, memory making items, anything that we can do to help validate that life. And then in 2006, we started training medical professionals. And then in 2013, we added our comfort doula and remembrance photography program. And I think that is such a big piece of an answer to your question, and the heart and mission behind this is 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4 talks about comforting others with the comfort we ourselves have received from God. And our comfort doulas are trained in perinatal and neonatal loss support and remembrance photography to physically go into the hospital and to show that love to these families and help honor those lives with footprints, handprints, pictures, different memory-making items, and also to just help take the fear away from these parents so they can parent their child even in loss. And I think really that's the heart of it, is just that comfort pours through us and that love pours through each person, whether we're in person, whether we're on our virtual support hotline talking to a family outside of Ohio, whether we're at the hospital or funeral home, whether we're walking with them in grief afterward, that it's that love and that comfort.
Is there a moment, a family story or experience that has stayed with you, one that reminds you why this work is so important and continues to inspire your commitment?
There are so many stories, but one of the stories that I find really powerful that shows both the local and the global impact of this work really just stays in my heart. I was recovering from some health issues from serving, and also just health issues I had carried even back from losing the baby. So I was coming back into my work and kind of tentatively tiptoeing back in, processing my own journey, at the time. And so this family was special anyway, but when we arrived at the hospital, this was a family from Africa that was here on work visa, and they had experienced a stillbirth of their daughter. Their daughter had died, and we were called to the hospital. The nurses offered our services, and if the parents accept, then they call us, and we were there to show them love and honor their baby. And we brought out the little gown, and we brought out all, the footprints and the tiny diaper, and the mom chose those items. And when we first arrived, Mom was, of course, just devastated and not knowing what to do. No parent thinks about what would you do if your baby died, or knows exactly on their own what would I want. And so to have someone guide you and offer things you may not even know you wanted, and then that brings comfort to her. So as we went through the journey of connecting with that baby, you could see Mom and Dad both just have peace flowing through them, and almost a deep breath, those shoulders go down, and there's comfort and peace by the end, because they were able to honor their baby and connect with her. And so fast forward months later, we're having our annual training. And I received a message from someone in, I think it was from Kenya. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember today the exact location. But at first I thought it was spam. So I was ignoring it because I don't get a lot of messages from Kenya.
No.
And then I read it, and it was a story from a midwife who had no resources in the area. And she said, "You helped my friend. You helped my friend months ago, and I want to tell you the story." And she says, she starts to tell me how her friend called her devastated, crying. And she's here in Ohio, and she called Africa or Kenya. And she's just devastated. And she said a few hours later, she called and she had peace in her voice and she was calm. And she said something had changed. And then she started to tell me about these two angels that were sent to come alongside her and help her with her baby, and how much comfort and peace they brought. And she said, when I had heard my friend, when I heard her voice crying, I fell to my knees and prayed here and, oceans away. And you were the answer to that prayer. God sent you. And what a powerful and humbling just testimony. And there are so many more. Our comfort doulas that go out day and night to serve these families. There's so many more, but what a powerful testimony, not only of what we do here in Ohio, but also globally. And we ended up training this midwife and sending resources to her. And SGM has now touched about 22,000 families since we started. We ship our items. So we serve in person at the hospitals and have a relationship with them here throughout Northwest Ohio and throughout the entire state. So not just here in Toledo at ProMedica and Mercy, but also we go to OSU, Cleveland Clinic. We go throughout the state. But then we also provide virtual support and resources to about every state in the U.S. and about 35 countries worldwide. So it's a pretty amazing thing that has been started in my basement in Deshler, Ohio in 2004, and God has really grown it. And just the women that He has sent to serve in this ministry, they're really the heartbeat of it as well. We have 200 volunteers who either make items, go to the hospitals, or help with events. 7 paid staff who wear about 5 hats apiece. If you work in a nonprofit, you have to know how to do 5 jobs. And 1 intern from BDSU we get each semester. So these amazing women just pour themselves out, and they're changing the story for these grieving families by just showing up and being with them in it. So
that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
When you think about the future of Sufficient Grace Ministries, and I do see a book in front of you, what do you hope to continue building? And also going beyond, how can community members support your organization?
So one thing to know is that we do not charge families for any of our products or services. We are fully supported by donations, and we're so grateful to those donors who help support our organization. That's how we can do this work. And so support that way is always needed, of course, financial support, but also volunteers, people who have the heart to serve in this ministry, whether it's crocheting, sewing, or physically going to the hospital. We will train you. We will train you as a photographer. We'll train you as a support person, a doula, so you don't have to worry about that. But as far as our future, we continue to grow. We are training hospital systems. We are increasing how many times we go to the hospital and how many hospitals we serve. We did 43 trainings with medical professionals, training 869 nurses, doctors, and students last year. And I think not only is it important for us to continue our work physically going in and coming alongside the parents and the medical team, but we multiply out what we're able to do when we equip nurses and doctors to also have that compassionate, patient-centered care. What we learned as we've done this work that we would have never realized, as the patient, you feel like your medical team is fully prepared for whatever happens. They are trained wonderfully in how to save a life. There's little to no training on what to do when a baby dies, even though 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in loss. So I think the future is definitely to continue to bring in those hearts to serve, but also to equip the medical professionals. And a lot of my role has shifted into that piece of teaching. And I went through my own family's, my own journey of that. My latest book is actually called Grief Bearer. And most of our books and resources at Sufficient Grace are for grieving families. And while anyone, if you've grieved in any way, this would certainly speak to you. This is the heart behind this book is really for those people in the helping profession, and how are we impacted when we are carrying that secondary trauma and entering in over and over with people who are walking through trauma. How are we impacted? What do we carry? How does that impact our health? And exploring that, because in the healthcare profession, we often want to care for others and deny care to ourselves. And I think that's not just healthcare profession, honestly. I think, and I'm sure men carry this as well, but I think women, we put on ourselves that we should be caring for everyone. We should be nurturing, we should be pouring out, and yet we deny care to ourselves. And what happens then? So I have experienced that. I have almost lost my life a couple times from not caring for myself enough as I cared for others. And the compassion fatigue, all of that is so real in our world. And so I think this is an important message, not just for healthcare professionals, probably women in general, and just people who are exhausted from pouring out. And we need to remember to heal ourselves and to experience healing in ourselves as well. So
Absolutely. All right, a few lightning round questions.
Okay.
Buckle up, Kelly. One word your friends would use to describe you.
This one is so hard because I really don't know. I think I would love for them to say compassionate, but I don't know that that's what they would say. I'm sure they would probably say talkative, because I always have a lot of words and I love words. But recently a friend actually said survivor, and I think I like that.
Yeah, that's a great word, and that you are. A book that has stayed with you.
It's called Sabbath, and I can never remember the exact subtitle. It's about finding rest, delight, and renewal. Delight is the favorite word of mine. And it's just about learning how to breathe and be still and rest, and how much Sabbath goes beyond what we think of as just worship and sitting there, but just truly filling back up and resting. So that's been a journey, that book.
All right. Well, something that always makes you laugh, no matter what.
It's my husband. He's hysterical. And people don't know that unless they really know him, because he's very stoic and quiet and strong, silent type. And so they're always like, really?
Oh,
but
yeah.
he's so funny. That's why I married him.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
Funny.
If you could share a meal with any inspiring woman, past or present, who would it be?
My mom.
Oh, great.
My mom passed in 2006 at the age of 50 after a battle with cancer. And I miss her so much. Mm-hmm. So my mom.
Awesome. In one sentence, what does hope mean to you?
Okay, I'm cheating on this one. I need to cheat a little bit because, of course, we have the hope of heaven and we have the hope of eternity. But I have this favorite quote about hope, and I just really have to read it. I know this is against the rules, but you can cut it out if you want to. But this is such a good quote about hope. Hope is actually our word, one of our words of the year here at Sufficient Grace. We always pick a word, so it was a great question. And this quote is not mine. It's from Matthew at Crow's Fault, and it's, people speak of hope as if it is this delicate, ephemeral thing made of whispers and spider webs. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of cobblestones in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for another go. That's my favorite definition of hope.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And Kelly, thank you so much for sharing the incredible work you do, and the hope and healing you provide families at their most, their biggest time of need. And we appreciate all that you do for the community. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.
There you go. Kelly, thank you so much for sharing all that you do here at Sufficient Grace Ministries, so that families do not have to walk through the grief and loss of infants or a lost pregnancy. We are ready to hit the road and see who's next in the driver's seat.